At the close of World War II, the United States controlled the most powerful and most productive shipbuilding machine on Earth. By the time the war ended, American shipyards had turned out roughly 500 ships, representing nearly 90% of total global shipbuilding tonnage during the conflict. At Kaiser's Yard in Vancouver, Washington, the pace was almost unbelievable, one Liberty ship every 5 days. That kind of industrial output is what allowed the U.S. Navy to rise into a position of global dominance, projecting unmatched maritime power to every corner of the world for 80 years, and counting. But over time, the balance has shifted. The world changed. China caught up. And that is exactly why the U.S. Navy has launched a massive, highly ambitious modernization drive, not merely to restore the old status quo, but to lock in American naval dominance for decades ahead, even if it means doing it right in China's backyard. So let's dig into what's inside this plan, why the Navy believes it's necessary, and what obstacles have to be cleared for it to actually work the way it's intended. Back at the end of the Chinese Civil War in 1949, China's shipbuilding base was close to non-existent. Fast forward to today, and China's shipbuilding capacity is estimated to be more than 200 times larger than America's. Its Navy is already bigger than the U.S. Navy by number of hulls, even if it still trails in total tonnage, and China is rapidly narrowing the technology gap too. Meanwhile, U.S. shipbuilding has withered so badly that it now represents less than 1% of global tonnage. If this trajectory holds, the U.S. Office of Naval Intelligence projects that within a decade, China could be operating 475 battle force ships compared to the U.S. Navy's projected 305 to 317, a gap that would put the United States at a numerical and operational disadvantage, especially in the Western Pacific. That growing urgency, this sense that time is running out, is written all over the Navy's budget request for fiscal year 2026. That request is wrapped into the fiscal year 2026 National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, which cleared both the U.S. Senate and Congress in December 2025. Inside that package is the Navy's most aggressive shipbuilding push in years, and the mix of vessels being requested shows exactly how the Navy's priorities are shifting. In 2024, the Navy asked Congress to fund 9 ships. In 2025, that number dropped to 6. But in 2026, the Navy is asking for 19 new hulls. Put bluntly, it's the largest single request for new ships in 25 years. The price tag for those new hulls is $47.3 billion, and that figure represents only about 16% of the Navy's total requested budget of $292.2 billion. So, what does the Navy want to build? The list is specific: 1 Columbia-class ballistic missile submarine, 2 Virginia-class attack submarines, 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, 1 San Antonio-class amphibious transport dock, 1 America-class amphibious assault ship, 9 medium landing ships, 2 John Lewis-class replenishment oilers, and 1 Impeccable-class ocean surveillance ship. And what stands out immediately is what's not in the request. There are no new Constellation-class frigates included, even though that class has appeared in the Navy's recent planning. In November, Secretary of the Navy John Phelan announced the frigate program had been canceled, abruptly stopping construction on 4 of the 6 planned ships after only 2, the USS Constellation and the USS Congress, had actually begun construction. The U.S. hasn't truly built a brand new hull from scratch since the 1960s, and the Constellation class was not supposed to be a revolutionary undertaking. The idea was that it would be relatively simple and relatively cost-effective. Adapt a standardized, proven design based on the Italian FREM platform. But the program ran into severe delays and major cost overruns, driven in no small part by extensive design changes that turned the original concept into something almost unrecognizable, with only 15% commonality left compared to its European parent design. Under those conditions, scrapping the program may have been the most practical decision, particularly because the Navy wants to speed up modernization by redirecting unspent Constellation money into faster-to-produce ship classes, including unmanned surface combatants. Also absent from the shipbuilding request itself is the continuing Ford-class aircraft carrier build program. However, the NDAA does authorize incremental funding that allows the Navy to pursue purchases of the next 2 Ford-class carriers, along with a total of 5 Columbia-class ballistic missile submarines. The document explicitly states that the Secretary of the Navy may enter into 1 or more contracts for advanced procurement, advanced construction, and material and equipment in economic order quantities associated with the procurement of the Ford-class aircraft carriers. Executives at Newport News Shipbuilding, where these carriers are built, argue that a block-buy approach saves money by purchasing materials earlier and stabilizing the supply chain by guaranteeing consistent work. And of course, a multi-billion-dollar advanced procurement order is not likely to damage Huntington Ingalls Industries' share price, or the executive's bonus prospects for that matter. On submarines, the NDAA indicates the Navy could sign a contract to acquire all 5 Columbia-class boats in fiscal year 2026, with the first intended for delivery in 2028. The request also includes $989 million for the Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Program aimed at modernizing the Navy's 4 public shipyards: Norfolk, Virginia; Portsmouth, Maine; Puget Sound, Washington; and Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. These yards average over 80 years old, and in some cases the dry docks are even older, an issue that becomes one of the biggest challenges to making the whole modernization plan succeed, as we'll get into later. Beyond that, the budget allocates $16.2 billion for ship maintenance and $7.3 billion for ship operations, numbers that underline just how enormous the ongoing cost is of running a globally deployed Navy. But a modern Navy isn't just ships, especially not one as massive as the U.S. Navy. In many cases, American hulls are essentially platforms for delivering advanced weapons, transporting Marines and other ground forces, and projecting unrivaled U.S. air power. That's why tighter integration between these pieces, naval, air, Marines, and the broader military, is a central part of the strategic logic driving this modernization push. So alongside shipbuilding, the NDAA also authorizes $17 billion for Navy aviation procurement, $5.8 billion for Navy weapons procurement, and $3.8 billion for Marine Corps procurement. In aviation, the Navy's purchase plan includes 10 F-35C Lightning II fighters, the carrier-capable version of the 5th-generation jet, adding to a current fleet of 60. It includes 15 Mitrar 60RS Seahawk helicopters, which would raise the total to 235, and 2 CH-53K King Stallion heavy-lift helicopters, still early in development, adding to an existing fleet of 10. The order also includes 4 E-2D Advanced Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft, expanding on the 30 already in service, and it includes 6 MQ-25A Stingray unmanned aerial refueling tankers, which would double the existing fleet, though a serial production line is still being established. The MQ-25 Stingray is the Navy's lead effort to field a fixed-wing UAV capable of catapult launches from supercarriers, with a planned total buy of 67 operational aircraft and 9 test aircraft. It's intended to solve a real operational problem. Carrier air wings need a more efficient aerial refueling system than what exists today. But the program has slipped badly behind schedule, and those delays have triggered component obsolescence issues that help drive a 65% increase in projected unit cost, up to $209 million each. Even so, if the MQ-25 can be integrated successfully into carrier air wings, it could potentially be adapted for other missions, like carrying LRASM anti-ship missiles. Rounding out aviation procurement are 6 T-45C Goshawk trainer aircraft, adding to an existing inventory of about 150. On weapons, the Navy plans major procurement in 2026, including 280 Tomahawk cruise missiles, over 1,000 JDAMs, Joint Direct Attack munitions, 200 AGM-88G advanced anti-radiation guided missiles, 150 AM-174B long-range air-to-air missiles, 100 naval strike missiles for surface ships, 60 SM-6 Block IB interceptors, and 500 APKWS laser-guided rockets. The budget also funds upgrades to Aegis combat systems across destroyers and cruisers. These buys help refill stockpiles depleted during U.S. operations in the Red Sea in support of Israel across 2024 and 2025, while simultaneously improving the fleet's lethality, electronic warfare strength, and air and missile defense capability. Now, no serious modernization plan in the current era can be credible if it ignores unmanned systems, especially in naval and aerial warfare. And as the war in Ukraine and the 12-day war between Israel and the U.S. and Iran have highlighted, drones are not just a side story anymore. They've reshaped how wars are fought, particularly in the air and at sea. In the naval domain, Ukraine's low-cost but deadly sea drones have battered Russia's Black Sea Fleet and disrupted its shadow tanker operations, even reaching as far as the Mediterranean. For the U.S. Navy, unmanned vessels represent the promise of radically shrinking costs and reducing risk, if they can be produced and deployed at meaningful scale. That is reflected in the Navy's 2026 budget request, $5.3 billion for unmanned systems, roughly a 70% increase over 2025. That includes $1.7 billion for autonomous unmanned surface vessels, USVs, $1.2 billion for software, and $734 million for unmanned underwater vehicles, UUVs, to extend fleet reach and reduce risk to crewed ships. The budget includes funds to buy 12 medium unmanned surface vehicles, or MUSVs, and 6 large unmanned surface vehicles, or LUSVs. It includes upgrades to the Common Unmanned Surface Vehicle, or CUSV, for mine countermeasures, plus additional Barracuda Large Displacement UUVs, or LDUUVs, for undersea surveillance. It also covers autonomous mine hunting systems like the AN/AQS-20C and Mk-18 MOD-2 Kingfish UUV. There's also $58 million directed toward developing carrier-based collaborative combat aircraft, or CCAs, essentially wingman drones. In September, it was revealed that contracts went out to Anduril, Boeing, General Atomics, and Northrop Grumman seeking proposals for carrier-based CCAs. A fifth contract later went to Lockheed for its MDCX autonomy platform. And perhaps even more significant than the spending itself, the Navy has created a new office designed to consolidate autonomous system development and procurement under one umbrella. That office is called the Portfolio Acquisition Executive Robotic Autonomous System, or PAERAS. It will absorb development responsibility for up to 66 programs spread across 18 different offices, all under a single acquisition leader reporting directly to the Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Research, Development, and Acquisition. This portfolio covers everything from the XL unmanned underwater vehicle program to the emerging modular attack surface craft and planned swarming small unmanned surface systems. In total, the PAE will oversee about $19 billion in acquisitions across these programs over the next 5 years. Even though none of these systems are expected to be fully ready within 2026, Congress has still earmarked $2.1 billion for what is now being called the MASK program, the Navy's effort to build an unmanned ship that functions as both an adjunct magazine and a sensor platform for manned ships. The MASK is intended to replace the previous large and medium USV programs. Conceptually, it would carry two 40-foot shipping containers and cruise at 25 knots, roughly 25 miles per hour, for up to 2,500 nautical miles. With about 75 kilowatt hours of electrical consumption, the MASK could, for example, carry 8 SM-6 missiles. The budget also includes $113 million to procure one Orca plus $21.5 million in R&D. Boeing's Orca XL UUV is designed to be the Navy's first large submarine drone, a 50-ton hybrid propulsion unmanned underwater vehicle that can stay submerged for months, travel nearly 7,500 miles, and carry 8-ton payloads. Maybe 2026 will finally be the year it actually enters the water. The Orca program has been delayed for years due to supplier problems and technical challenges in autonomy, battery endurance, and navigation. Other large displacement UUV efforts and solicitations include Ocean Explorer for long-endurance missions with modular payloads, the DIU's Combat Autonomous Maritime Platform concept for torpedo-armed combat UUVs, and DARPA Northrop Grumman's large Manta Ray UUV. The Navy also requested $50 million for Project Liberator, focused on developing a containerized undersea launcher for heavyweight torpedoes, likely intended for integration with larger USVs and UUVs. And beyond hardware, the Navy is also seeking $2.7 billion for science and technology, research and development in 2026. That R&D money includes $312 million for design and development of the Columbia-class submarine, including nuclear propulsion work, plus another $623 million for the future attack submarine to counter emerging threats. Notably, the 2026 plan also emphasizes readiness, warfighter culture, and quality of life. It includes an across-the-board 3.8% military pay raise and over $1 billion education and training investments. It extends the in-home childcare pilot through 2029, providing fee support to help families offset costs. It also creates a pilot to increase childcare payments in high-cost areas. On education, the Department of Defense Education Activity, or DoDEA, is authorized to establish a dual enrollment program with a higher education institution, allowing students at DoDEA schools to take college-level classes and earn credit at no cost. Local districts with large populations of military-connected children continue receiving impact aid, with $50 million in DoD impact aid, and an additional $20 million for districts serving military children with severe disabilities. In housing, the plan funds 3 family housing construction projects, along with revitalization efforts for existing homes, maintenance for roughly 8,650 government-owned units and 1,650 leased units, and planning and design work supporting projects primarily in Guam and Japan. So yes, close to $300 billion in Navy spending buys a sweeping set of capabilities, and it is likely to exceed China's 2026 spending, even if it doesn't match China's production output. With off-budget spending considered, China's defense budget is often estimated between $330 billion and $450 billion, with some U.S. lawmakers suggesting the true total could reach $700 billion. If Navy spending typically accounts for about 25 to 30% of total defense expenditures, then U.S. Navy spending could exceed China's by 1 to 3 times. More importantly, the 2026 plan signals a focus on speed and agility, an attempt to close gaps in hull production and the rollout of ultramodern systems. As Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Secretary of War, argued, this spending is not simply about what another YouTube channel calls TOMP, throwing obscene amounts of money at the problem. Speed to delivery is now our organizing principle, he said in November. He added that if warfighters die or the nation loses because delivery was too slow, then the system has failed, plain and simple. He warned that urgency has slipped too far and must be recovered. The overall budget is framed as a tool to support the interim national defense strategic guidance implemented by President Donald Trump, aimed at restoring peace through strength and rebuilding deterrence. According to Hegseth, the objective is to restore warrior ethos, rebuild the force, and reestablish deterrence. Navy Secretary Phelan distilled the Navy's approach into three priorities: strengthening shipbuilding and the maritime industrial base, building an adaptive, accountable, innovative warfighter culture, and improving the health, welfare, and training of service members and their families. In this view, the Navy intends to rebuild, reform, and refocus on readiness, accountability, and deterrence. There are two major strategic arcs outlined here. The Navigation Plan for America's Warfighting Navy focuses on the capabilities and enablers needed to raise baseline readiness across competition, crisis, and conflict. And the CMC's planning guidance emphasizes deterrence, while still ensuring the ability to defeat enemies if deterrence fails. On paper, the 2026 budget appears designed to hit all of those aims. By the end of 2026, the Navy expects to field a deployable battle force of 287 ships, 115 surface combatants, 63 submarines, 36 support ships, 31 combat logistics ships, 31 amphibious ships, and 11 aircraft carriers. That total is 9 fewer ships than 2025, reflecting a choice to prioritize quality and readiness over raw hull counts. The idea is to retire aging vessels and replace them with more advanced platforms suited for high-end conflict, particularly in the Pacific. Additionally, the procurement plan's strong tilt toward amphibious and logistics platforms is described as a response to rising challenges in the Middle East and Latin America, supporting rapid crisis response and sustained forward operations. Supporting modernization further, enormous sums are directed into R&D for future conflict needs. Nuclear cruise missiles, modernization of the TACAMO strategic communication system linking National Command Authority to nuclear delivery forces, unmanned systems, and classified projects. As noted, the plan also includes multiple quality of life and quality of service initiatives. And controversially, the 2026 approach also aims to cut what it labels wasteful spending by trimming lower-value programs such as DEI, climate initiatives, contract services, IT services, and workforce optimization, reinvesting those funds into urgent priorities. Taken together, the investment represents more than the U.S. outspending rivals. It signals a strategic adjustment in maritime posture and sends a message to allies and adversaries alike. The United States is investing heavily to protect its interests and sustain hegemony at sea. Still, there's a major question hanging over all of it. Can the United States actually execute this plan? There are serious doubts that the Navy can overcome deep structural challenges. Despite ambitious intentions behind shipyard modernization, the U.S. produced only 3 new hulls in 2025. The coordinated push across regulation, trade, investment, workforce development, and industrial capacity is making an impact. But is it realistic to expect aging shipyards to scale output more than 6-fold in a single year to deliver 19 ships? That seems optimistic, to put it mildly. A second major issue is labor. Scaling production requires thousands of skilled workers, and shipbuilding has long faced an acute shortage in critical roles like master welders, pipe fitters, and electricians. You can print money, but you cannot print welders. There's already a national shortage, and competition from other industries, especially the booming AI data center construction sector, only makes recruiting harder. Raising wages and benefits is one solution. Importing labor is another. Outsourcing certain construction tasks to major shipbuilding allies such as Japan and South Korea is also sometimes discussed, but each of those options has downsides. Outsourcing can slow the rebuilding of domestic workforce capacity, while relying on foreign workers can raise national security risks. These problems have helped create a familiar pattern. Delays and cost overruns have become standard across major Navy shipbuilding programs. A 2025 Government Accountability Office report indicated that nearly every major program, including Virginia-class submarines and Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, is running years behind schedule. So the real question is whether the Navy's newer procurement approach, emphasizing unmanned systems, distributed forces, and consolidated acquisition structures, can finally reverse the trend for what used to be the sleeping giant of American naval production, or whether hundreds of billions will once again primarily enrich the military-industrial ecosystem, while U.S. shipbuilding continues to struggle and China keeps accelerating. We'll be tracking every major development as this plan unfolds, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. Thanks for watching.